Hello, Andy. Thank you for being here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm so grateful that you are here with me today on Michelle's Conversations That Matter. It's so nice to have been introduced to you and the amazing work that you're doing. I learned about you, Andy, through a mutual friend. He was sharing with me the stand that you are for men and men's mental health, and that resonated with the work that I'm doing in the mental health space. And so when I reached out to you, I was so grateful that you said yes to joining me on my series. My series, Michelle's Conversations That Matter, is really all about causing awareness for mental health, but it's also about educating and inspiring and going into those conversations that might be a little uncomfortable. So I like to consider myself a conversation starter because we need more open dialogue. Today we're going to talk about men's mental health. And, you know, the mental health of the men in our lives is something that I think needs more attention because men tend to suffer in silence. And when you think about, you know, the pandemic that we're going through, the statistics from here in the US are 1 in 3 are dealing with anxiety or depression. And then you think about the men that are dealing with that in silence. So I'm grateful that we're going to have yet another conversation about mental health of men today. So before we dive into some of our discussion, could you just take a moment and introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, where you live, what you do?
Yeah, so my name's Andy Bishop. As it says on the ticker at the bottom, I'm a British Army veteran, and I'm the founder of ManGang. And the ManGang is a peer support organisation that exists to support men through whatever might be troubling them in their life.
It's amazing. Before we went on the air, I was sharing with you, I was quite devastated to read the story of a local woman in my own community who had written the horrible recount of finding her husband after he had taken his life. And that just, it really shook me because here's a man who had a successful career, was struggling with unemployment, was struggling with finances, was a father, was a husband, and had planned his suicide meticulously down to insurance to make sure that the family was okay. That story really upset me. And I'm thinking about what could we have done different? What could be done differently? And then I think about the work that you're doing with the ManGang. So could you tell us why you created the ManGang and what it does and how it's helping men in the UK?
Yeah, so the ManGang, basically, I founded it just over a year ago. We've just celebrated our first birthday, but the actual inclination to start it happened quite a long time previous to that. So my backstory and my relationship with mental health. I didn't have mental health before around 2005, and the reason I didn't have it was because of the job that I was doing in the British Army. I was a soldier. I was a career soldier. I was doing well. I was top of my game. I was working in an instructor post, instructing trained soldiers to progress in their career. So I was really winning at being a soldier. And there was an incident where I wasn't firing all cylinders. Something wasn't right in my head. I wasn't enjoying my work. All I could think about when I got up in the morning was pulling that duvet back over my head at night, and there was no get up and go anymore. And my boss basically sent me to the doctor. I went to see this doctor. I was wearing my uniform. The doctor was wearing his uniform, and soldier to soldier, he looked at me and he said, "Mate, you're depressed." And I looked back at him and I said, "No, I can't be. Look at me." And that's how I perceived mental health to be. I thought it only happened to people that were weak in stature, in achievements and things like that. But that was because of the lack of education back then. There was no education about it, certainly in the British military around that time. And all I did, because I convinced myself, because I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to things like this, I convinced myself that I was better than depression. I was better than anything poor mental health wise. So I just ignored the advice. I was prescribed some medication. I was given a couple of weeks on sick leave. and yeah, just gave everything a good stiff ignoring, and went back to work, having thrown the prescription in the bin, and yeah, carried on, and so began this cycle. I would be good for a period of time, and then something would happen, or nothing would happen. I'd just start feeling rubbish,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, I'd be back in this hole again. But every time it happened, each repetition of this cycle, the hole was getting deeper, or the incident that put me in the hole was getting bigger and more dramatic. It wasn't until 2017 really that I kind of accepted that there was stuff going on with my mental health. I mean, I spent 2 months in a psychiatric unit. If that doesn't tell somebody that they need to do something about their mental illness. If I was in a hospital with a broken leg for 2 months,
Right.
I would go to physiotherapy and I'd do the exercises.
Mm-hmm.
But I spent 2 months in a psychiatric unit, came out and just tried to carry on where I'd left off, which, yeah, not the best plan. So 2017 came along, and I have to tell you, I tried to end my own life in 2012. So I'd left the army, tried to end my own life because I was becoming a burden on society. I had no identity. I had nothing to give anybody, or so I thought. Yeah, after that event didn't happen, I decided to go it alone. I came off all my medication instantly. I stopped seeing the counsellors, stopped seeing the therapists, stopped seeing the doctors, and made a pledge with myself to get bigger, better, faster, stronger. Watch out, I'm coming through. And I did. I in my own head, I was doing fantastically well. I did it for about 5 years. But all I was doing was I was so blinkered.
Yeah.
I was the first person in work in the morning. I would open up the building and I'd sit behind the computer, and I'd be already halfway through my working day when my colleagues would arrive. I'd be the last person to leave. I'd never take a break. I'd set myself impossible deadlines. If a client wanted me to do something, and they'd say, "Oh, yeah, you've got 2 weeks to do it, to get that back to me," I'd say, "Right, I'll have it back to you in a week." And for what other reason other than to prove that I was this amazing human.
Right.
And then, yeah, that wasn't sustainable. So I had a breakdown, resulted in my employer sending me off to see the occupational health psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a bit of an epiphany while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting in this office, beautiful, idyllic location next to an old water mill, old English kind of water mill, beautiful place. And I sat in this psychiatrist's office, and she said, "Right, I'm going to sign you off work for 6 weeks." And I looked at her and I thought, "Are you crazy?" I thought I should be counselling you, because what you've just said, it just did not compute.
Right.
How can you sign me off for 6 weeks when I need to have work? I need to have this focus. I need to be throwing myself into making somebody else rich. And she said, "Look, do you watch movies?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "I've got you down as an action movie kind of guy." And I said, "Yeah, I like an action movie." She said, "So plenty of explosions, plenty of gunfire, plenty of shooting, things like that?" "Yeah." She said, "Have you ever been disturbed while you're watching a movie?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "What do you do when that disturbance happens?" I said, "Well, I stop the film, or I'll rewind it and start where I left off." And she said, "That's what you're doing with your life." She said, "If you don't listen to what I'm telling you, if you don't accept that there's something wrong and you need to work to fix it," because previously I'd take all the advice and the minute I'd leave the surgery or the hospital or whatever, it gets screwed up, throw it in the bin.
Yeah.
She said, if you don't take this advice, she said, if you don't do something about it, you're pressing the pause button. You have 6 weeks off. She said, you'll go back into work. Guess where that movie's going to start again? She said, you're just delaying the inevitable explosion. She said, but unlike the movie, she said, every time you delay it, that explosion gets more powerful.
Bigger.
And that kind of really resonated with me, not in the instant, that she said it, but I thought on those kind of words for quite some time after that, and I thought I've really got to start doing something about it. So I started back on the medication. I started seeing the therapist. I started practicing mindfulness. I started doing all these little bits and pieces that I knew what to do, but I really believed in it this time. Now, so I'm on this period of sick leave. I'm starting to get better. I'm starting to feel better, and then out of the blue, I got tested. I got tested really big style. So I was sitting at home, minding my own business, and my phone started buzzing, and I looked at the phone, and the name that was on there was a friend that I'd served with in the military in Germany a number of years previously. That group of friends, there's 10 or 15 of us in this circle of friends that were really close. We really kind of clicked at that moment in time. We went on operations together. We worked hard. We played hard. It really was a close knit bunch of guys. So when I saw his name pop up on my phone, I thought there's something wrong with that circle of friends, and I couldn't answer the phone. I was like, I couldn't answer the phone. I was almost pressing the pause button again and delaying the inevitable. So the phone rang, and every 2 or 3 minutes it was ringing again. I was ignoring it. 2 or 3 minutes would pass, and he'd phone back. Because what I didn't know was the rest of my friends were doing the same thing. So eventually I answered the phone. I sat on my couch, opened the phone, sat there ready for this phone call to come. So I answered it. Hello, mate. No small talk, no nothing. First words out of his mouth were, "Are you sitting down?" I said, yeah, I'm sitting down, and my heart sank in that instant. I knew that that was the precursor to some really bad news. And he said, "It's your mate. It's Sparky. Sparky was killed yesterday in a firearms incident in Germany." And I remember the conversation. I was just like, I had no words. I was like, right, thanks for letting me know, mate. See you soon. Bye. And that was it. This life-changing news.
Yeah.
And the way that it was broken was over in like 30 seconds, if that. And I just sat on the couch, and I was like, wow, what's just happened here, you know? Literally, like, my world was falling apart. But now, what I've learned since then, one of my coping strategies that I've put in place is I look for a silver lining in everything that happens. I can find a silver lining in anything. I found a silver lining in my friend's untimely death, and that silver lining was it brought that circle of friends back together. So for the next period of time, we were in contact a lot more. We were talking a lot more. We were getting in touch with each other. We truly had each other's backs as we were going through this. The conversations were all broadly similar. So the army had released the news of his death as a firearms incident or a firearms accident, and rightly so. Until they've got the facts, that's how it gets released. And we kind of worked on that notion that it was an accident, and we were like, oh, it must have been this, it must have been that, it must have been the other. And I think deep in our heart of hearts, we all knew that it was suicide. We all knew he'd pulled the trigger, but we didn't want to accept it. We still we were trying to work it out. Then it did break that it was suicide, and then the questions started happening. Then why would he do it? What would make him do it? All these questions. Something very profound happened during that time. One of my friends said, "Give up." He said, "Give up trying to reason it." He said, "You'll never know." He said, "You'll never know that the reason why." He said, "That's a secret that only he and his maker will ever know truly." So that kind of came from that. I don't dwell on the reasons why, because I can't change it. It's happened, you know. So yeah, that was in mid 2017. So there's a couple of things happened at his funeral. We all went to his funeral in Germany, because he was settling in Germany. He only had 4 days left to go in the army, so he was settling in Germany. He had a new job to go to on the following Monday. So he's leaving the army on the Friday, starting the new job on the Monday. He had a lovely home in his adopted hometown there, beautiful German wife, his son, and he had a new life ready set up. So we all made the pilgrimage there to go and pay our last respects. So during the funeral service, there was a moment when, obviously it was an emotional affair, and there was a moment during that service that the emotion that came with this moment, it really had no place at a funeral. I couldn't understand why it was happening. I could understand it, but I didn't want to understand it. And it was a moment when we were outside in the cemetery, and the bearer party. So he got buried with full military honours, all the guys in uniform, all the pomp and circumstance that goes with it. So the guys that were with the bearer party, they'd moved away from the coffin, and they were undressing the coffin, taking the Union flag off it and his medals and his hat and all the rest of it, ready to hand back to his widow. Now, because he was getting buried in a German cemetery, there was a German padre and there was a British military padre delivering the service, and one was doing it in English, one was doing it in German. The British guy wasn't using any microphones or anything like that. The German guy was. Because they weren't doing any talking during this phase in the ceremony, the German padre had taken the microphone and he put it down on the chair next to where young Liam was sitting, so my friend's son. And as the bear party moved away, I was looking straight into this kid's face, and all I could see was just anguish and torment and pain and just like total confusion and total lack of purpose, just total loss written all over this poor kid's face. And it's an image that is burnt into my memory. It never really fades.
Right.
But the really powerful thing that happened then was the microphone was picking up what was coming out of that face. And because I was standing next to a speaker, there was a PA system speaker over my shoulder. I could hear this noise that the microphone was picking up, and this kid is staring at this coffin containing his father, and he's just going, "Daddy, Daddy," barely discernible. And I get a little bit emotional when I'm recalling these moments because of what I know what I'm about to say, and I know the emotion that I was feeling. It has no place when you're paying your last respects to somebody that you love. But I hated that man.
Yeah.
I could not understand for the life of me how he would do what he did to that kid.
Yeah.
How he could do what he did to the rest of the people that were there assembled to pay their last respects. It just really, I just couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And those two, the sound and that picture, Liam's face was just, they'll stay with me forever and drive me forward in everything that I do these days. So I'm glad to say that emotion, it was short-lived. It went quite quickly. But it still happened, that experience has still happened. So a little bit later on, we'd gone back to a beautiful German beer garden in the middle of July. Very lovely place to be. Germans have an uncanny knack of producing very, very high octane lager. They're quite well known for their beers, aren't they? So add a German beer garden to about 400 or 500 people. A lot of the military that haven't seen each other for a long time there to celebrate the life of the man. And a party was kind of starting to form. I say a party, it was guys that haven't seen each other for a long time, standing in circles, chinking glasses, making conversation.
Sure.
And the conversations were all along the line of, do you remember when? Remember when we did this? And there was laughter and there was beers chinking, and it was it really was a celebration of this guy's life. So I took a step back from that. I was getting a little bit overwhelmed with one of the conversations. So I took a step back and I was just watching what was going on. And this other thought process and emotion just came washing over me then in that instant. And that was total and utter confusion. I was so confused that there was that many people all there paying their respects to this man. Yet he thought that he couldn't reach out to a single one of us.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking, I'm like, if he'd phoned me, even though I was in the UK and he was in Germany and we maybe hadn't spoken for a couple of years, if he'd have picked up the phone and said, mate, I'm struggling, I wouldn't have told him to man up. I wouldn't have said, come on, mate, we've done this, you can do it, and pull yourself together, and all those other phrases that men try to like offer as advice kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have probably jumped into the hole that he was in and helped him out because I kind of knew the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, if I'm honest, I didn't think about the ManGang then.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the groundwork was kind of started from. So, yeah, that's kind of
The foundation.
the foundation, the big epiphany that kind of happened. So I mentioned I was off work, so I was still off work for this time. I went back into the work environment a couple of months later, and I had a very structured return to work. I didn't go straight into the 9 to 5 straight away. It was a couple of mornings a week to start off with, and just ease myself back into it, which was absolutely the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I changed my total outlook on the working day. I would go in for my contracted hours. So rather than being the first person, I would get in on time and I would leave on time, and I'd start taking lunch breaks. And I started noticing like my productivity was going up. And it was like, how does this work? How does this work? I was 120 miles an hour before and never finishing anything. And now I'm mellowed a little bit. I'm getting things done better. I'm getting it right first time. My quality's gone up. My productivity's improved.
Mm-hmm.
I'm winning, absolutely winning at life. So one of my job roles at the time was as a trainer. So I would train construction site managers in health and safety.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst I'd been away on this summer off, the accrediting body for one of the courses that I taught, they had shoehorned in a little bit about mental health.
Okay.
into the syllabus for a course.
Uh-huh.
So my employer had looked at that, and they dedicated a whole PowerPoint slide in a 5-day course to mental health.
No.
Yeah. So I kind of found myself at a little bit of a loose end and it was a Thursday. It was the 4th day of this 5-day course. So I built up a good rapport with the guys. We had plenty of mutual respect. There's a lot of macho kind of banter going on. We had a good relationship, like trainer kind of delegate relationship going on. It was a nice place to be. And I found myself with this little bit of spare time, and I thought, I'm going to talk about the mental health bit. So I looked for the slide in the slide deck there, put it up on the screen, looked at it, turned it off, and I pulled a stool out from behind the computer, and I sat on the stool in front of these 20 battle-hardened builders, if you like, and I started telling the story.
Wow.
And I went into a little bit more detail than I have in the time we've just had. But yeah, I was sitting there. I cried in front of them. I was shaking in front of them. It was quite a powerful moment. But I remember thinking at the time, you need to get out of here quick. What's your exit strategy from this? Because these guys they're going to launch into you after this. They're going to start ridiculing you. They're going to take the mick. They're going to tell you to man up. They're going to start throwing things at you. So I had my exit strategy. I positioned myself next to the door. My plan was to announce lunchtime, then run away bravely and go and disappear and have my lunch upstairs away from the rest of the class. But it didn't happen. Every single one of them, to a man, stopped and said thank you to me, shook my hand, a couple of them gave me a hug. And I was like, what's just happened here? what have I just done here by telling that story?
Mm-hmm.
It really didn't hit home until a couple of weeks later. So I think I'd spoken about mental health again on a couple more courses, and I was like kind of buoyed by that experience.
Mm.
So a couple of weeks later, myself and my missus, we went down to Brighton. So I live in Southampton in the UK.
Uh-huh.
We drove about a couple of hours down the south coast to Brighton, another seaside town, where the Southampton football team were playing against Brighton. Just need to make that clear. It's football, soccer. It's not that game that you guys play with all the big pads on and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So we drove down there. We parked on the wrong side of the stadium and found ourselves wandering through the stadium, but we were in with all the home fans. So soccer has a bit of a rivalry kind of thing going on in the UK, and home fans and away fans, they try and keep them apart. So as we're walking through the crowds, I'm a little bit on edge. I'm thinking, oh, something could happen here. I became aware of this giant of a man, big Goliath of a man. I mean, he was, compared to me, I'm a big guy. I'm 6 foot. I'm pretty stocky. I'm quite a scary sight to look at, and to say that I was scared of this guy running towards me, he was massive. I thought I was going to get a club to the jaw, perhaps, for being an away fan. But as he came closer to me, I noticed that it wasn't anger on his face. He had a big grin on his face. And I'm like, this is not computing in my brain. I'm like, what's going on here? So he got right up in front of me and he threw his arms around me and he gave me this massive, massive hug. And as he hugged me, in my ear, he said, "Thank you." And I looked back and I think, click, I know where I know you're from. He was one of the builders that was sat on that course when I did that opening up little exercise that I just spoke about.
Yeah.
And I said, "Mate, you're looking well. What? Thank you. Thank you for what?" And he said, "Thank you for opening up on that day." And I was like, what do you mean? I couldn't understand it. And he said, "Because of you," he said, "if you hadn't have opened up on that day, I wouldn't have spoken to my missus, I wouldn't have spoken to the doctor, I wouldn't have spoken to my employer, and I would not be in the good place that I am right now." He said, "So thank you." And he had his kids with him, and yeah, such a powerful moment.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that what I was doing by sharing my vulnerabilities, by sharing this notion that it is okay, we can still be men, we can be real men, and we can still talk about our issues. We can empower men to do it, and it was so powerful. So
wow, Andy, it's amazing to me. It's amazing because it takes a man like you, a big dude, a tough dude, to be vulnerable, to give another man permission to just be himself.
And that's kind of what I do. I hold a mirror up when I'm talking. I hold a mirror up to these guys, and it basically says, "Look, if this guy can talk about it, then you can too."
Right.
So yeah, I then spoke about mental health, and I was equally passionate about mental health on all of the training courses over the next year or so.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't quite enough. It still wasn't quite enough. So I started thinking about, what could I do? What can I do to get that message out there even more? I just wanted people to grasp this message that it's okay to talk. So I started toying with the idea of setting up a men's mental health group, men's mental health support group, and I posted a request for assistance on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And on that request for assistance, I said, "Look, I'm thinking of setting up this men's mental health peer support group. Anybody got any helpful hints, tips, advice, things like that?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was overwhelmed with the responses. I was getting response after response, and it started numbering in the hundreds. There was responses just flooding in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away by them. But I was blown away by them because in the main, they were all negative. I was getting told, "You don't have any credentials, you don't have any qualifications, the market's swamped, there's no need for it, use the National Health Service, all these kind of negative kind of comments.
Right.
Thinking about it, LinkedIn probably wasn't the best place to do that. It's not that kind of a friendlier platform, but I did it, and everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
There was one message that I got, a direct message, and it was a direct message from a builder that I taught on a course previously, not the course, but a course. So we had a bit of an interaction going, and in that message there were 3 little words, and those 3 little words said so much, and they were my call to action. And all he'd written in this message was, "I need help." And I read them, and I looked at them, and because I knew this man, I knew how much it had taken for him to write those 3 words and send them to me. So that was on a Tuesday evening. I spoke to my missus, who was sitting on the sofa next to me. I said, "Can I use our coffee shop tomorrow for can I use the coffee shop tomorrow evening for this men's meeting?" She said, "Yeah, of course." She said, "But I thought you were going to start that in January." So this is in September last year.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, it was going to be January, but I've got to start it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Yeah, of course you can." So I headed over there on the Wednesday, and I sat and I waited, and nobody turned up. And I thought, well, at least I've tried. At least I've given it a go. I went home, said to my missus, like, "Yeah, nobody turned up. At least I've given it a go. You can't say I didn't try. Let's draw a line under it, move on," kind of thing. And she said, "Don't be stupid." And I said, "Well, nobody came." She said, you didn't give it a chance." She said, you created it on a knee-jerk reaction. You haven't given it a chance. She said, "You've got to go back next week at least."
Yeah.
And I'm so glad she did, because the next week I turned up, and 12 men came into the room, and I was like, wow, blown away, because the conversations that we started the meeting with 3 words. A simple question that we now use at every meeting that we've had since then. We ask, "Who are you?" Not tell us about yourself or anything like that. We ask this question, "Who are you?" And again, this came more by luck than by judgment. The morning of the second meeting, I'd been out and I'd been appointed to talk to a company of engineers about stress management. And I asked the question of this company of engineers. I said, "So tell me in your own words who you are." And we went round the group, and it started off, "My name's John. I'm the surveyor. I'm 45 years old." And the next one, "Yeah, my name's Phil. I'm a draftsman. I'm 30. And that was the answers that we got all the way around the room. It doesn't take much when you're in that setting. You can work out who the people are, what their job roles are. And what they've done is, I'd asked them who they are. I said, who are you? And they'd answered, "What are you?"
What are you? Yeah.
2 totally different things. And that's something that we do. That's something that we do in life, is we measure who we are by what we do.
What we do.
I certainly did when I was in the military.
Right.
When I handed my identity card in, my means of access to getting in and out of military installations, I also handed my identity in, because I was no longer a soldier, and that really played on me, because I had no place. I struggled to find my place in life. So yeah, that's the story of the ManGang, really.
You know, there's so much about what you shared that I love. And Andy, you are a true leader, and I'm so moved by your work. I think the thing that really resonates with me is the last thing you just said, amongst everything else. But this thing I tie it over to COVID and the fact that so many men have lost their employment, are struggling in their finances, had the identity of their job, like you just said, who are you versus what you do. And then you mentioned something before we came on the air about when you lose your job, you're not just losing your identity, and you're not losing only your finances or identity, you're also losing a degree of a support circle that you no longer have. So I mean, talk to us a little bit about that now, because I think as women who love our men, we forget how that can shake someone not to have the basic go to work community to talk to every day, and how that could really cause depression, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we all think back to the beginning of whatever lockdown kind of measures, I think we've all been in some period where we've been confined to our houses and we've not been allowed out unless it's for essential activities.
Right.
We think about the anxiety that brought, that total lack of purpose. You'd get up in the morning and you'd be looking around for things to do. I mean, my wife is really happy with me because all the DIY jobs and all the jobs at home got done that I've been putting off for so long. They're starting to mount up again now, but that starts bringing that anxiety to the fore. And what I was really conscious of around the country, certainly within the UK, was the level of anxiety as a nation started to rise.
Yeah.
And you could feel it. You could go out in the streets and you could feel it. You could feel people. You could see their reactions. If somebody got too close while they were out shopping, for example, you could see these totally overblown reactions because of this anxiety.
Right.
You spend too long in that anxious state, that's when it starts affecting your brain. And your brain is very, I was going to say very intelligent then. Your brain's very well designed. If you need to rest and you need to slow down, it will tell you to.
Yeah.
Because being anxious for too long is bad. And this is something that happens the minute you lose a job. So if you're taken out of work and you've been there for a significant period of time, let's say 6 months to a year, that's probably where it starts. It starts becoming routine. It starts becoming regular. You start making friends and making all these connections.
Yep.
This is now when it starts getting really dangerous, because all of a sudden you've got that routine and your body's used to it, your head's used to it, everything's all used to it, and you're snatched out of it. But anxiety starts.
Yeah.
And I need to get a job. So as well as the normal anxieties that you get, now you've got to think, how much money have I got left? How long can I last? And as those things go down, so does the mood.
Right.
And potentially the feelings of belonging, the feelings of self-esteem. Because it's not just losing the income. It is absolutely losing that circle of friends, losing your status in society.
Yep.
It's so many things that you lose, and we take for granted in work.
What can we do? What can we do to help the men in our lives? What do you think? I mean, I know, of a couple of support groups, but it takes something for a man to go, I'm going to go and talk about this. Like, what do we do? I think about the poor woman in my town who her husband had been planning his suicide, like methodically, like he had planned it and wanted his family to be okay. He wasn't talking to anyone. Like, how do we get them to talk? How do we prevent that? That they're so focused that that's the end game. Like, how do we help them?
We've got to keep on. That's what we've got to do. And we've got to try and get rid of this toxic masculinity that's snuck into all our cultures over the last few years, last generations, if you like. We've got to try and smash that, and we've got to really believe that it's okay to not be okay. That if a man does suddenly put his head above the parapet and say, do you know what, I'm feeling depressed, that instead of getting ridiculed and pushed to the back of the queue or whatever, we say, okay, and we listen.
And just listen.
And that's what we've got to do. Men, we are terrible at it. And sometimes in the ManGang groups, I really have to kind of clamp my mouth shut, because once the guy starts talking, he might not be looking for solutions.
Right.
But as men, that's our inbuilt kind of instinct, is to offer a solution to a problem.
Right.
I understand females get a little bit annoyed at us for doing that, when all you really want us to do is just listen. And we're terrible at it. We're problem solvers. We're solution finders. Yeah, I know how to fix that. And that's the kind of advice that we get. So that kind of shuts us up. when we're talking with our mates. We're talking with other men about our problems because we don't want to hear the solutions. We just want somebody to listen.
Right.
And once somebody has listened, once somebody has opened up, all those problems that are taking up all that processing power in the front of the brain, you've vocalized them, you've let them out of there. They're no longer thoughts. They've come out in words. They're tangible. They've got an effect on somebody. They then become less real, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
By making them real, they become less real.
Yep.
And this is what we do when we're bottling them up. We're arguing with ourselves within our heads.
Yeah.
So, in answer to your question, we've got at the ManGang, we've got this 3-part strategy. So our tagline for the ManGang is it's not weak to speak. So that's kind of us saying to men, you're not weak if you come and speak to us. There's your permission. Get in and come and see us. And our strategy is 3 lines, 3 simple lines. It's ask if you're living with it, listen if you're not, act if you know. And those actions that we try and encourage it could just be listening. It could be taking somebody to a group like the ManGang. It could be making time for somebody. Just being there. Just that hand on the shoulder. Say, do you know what? It's going to be all right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important. Do you have any wisdom? You've shared so much wisdom, but do you have any other wisdom that you want to leave with our group, with the folks who have been so generously watching and listening to you and your story? Is there anything else you want to add to your message?
I think I've said it all. I think if you want to leave with a final message, it's having poor mental health, having a state of poor mental health is nothing to be ashamed of. And what we need to do as society, as a world in general, is get it to a place where we're looking at poor mental health in the same way we look at poor physical health.
Yes.
And with physical health, everybody can relate to it. Everybody will pile on the sympathy and stuff like that. But because the mental health struggles are invisible, you don't get anything. You get stigma with it. So only by us being more open, sharing, saying, do you know what, I'm having a bad day, I'm feeling stressed, and getting it out there, every conversation like that we have, we're reducing that stigma.
Yes. And a conversation like ours today will hopefully do the same thing, Andy.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Michelle's Conversations That Matter, sharing your story. Thank you for the amazing work you're doing to help so many men in the UK. I hope people hear about what you're doing and bring it to their community to help their men. And if people want to get in touch with you, they can go to the mangang.co.uk and reach out to you. Is that right? Yeah,
that's brilliant. We're on there's contact details on the website there. We've also got a Facebook page, LinkedIn page. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as well, so if anybody reaches out to me. If you're in the States and you fancy a bit of ManGang action, come and join us on our Zoom calls. You wouldn't be the first Americans that we have coming in. We've got quite a following stateside. One of our stalwart members, if you like, is from Mexico City. So
nice.
Yeah. We get guys coming in from all over the world. So more the merrier.
So great. So it's accessible to everybody. I love that. I love it. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Andy, for being here and for all the great work you're doing. And I'm sure we will be in touch.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you for having me, Michelle. Thank you for your great work as well.
You're so welcome. Bye-bye.